7:06 p.m. So folks, and Emily, you can maybe you remember, you have to, at your reorganizational meeting or any other meeting thereafter, you appoint your representative to the Windham Central Board. And I believe you can appoint an alternate, or at a regularly warned board meeting, you can appoint a person to represent the board if the alternate and the rep can't make it. But you can't just say, our rep isn't here, so I'm gonna fill in.
That's absolutely accurate.
I agree with that.
Okay, so is there anybody that disagrees with that?
It's a statute, right? I mean, it's
Yeah.
not something we have to.
I'd be sure on that. Just saying.
Yeah, I'm just saying, Abby, that's what we've always done for 20
And Howie made it very clear at the last meeting that he was not going to attend. And we agreed that it would be okay for me to represent him. Daniel was unable to attend. So if that's a problem and the board decides that, then that's fine. I just want to make sure that's clear and on the record.
Did
Abby,
they decide?
you say this at your last meeting, the Windham last meeting?
So, and just so everyone knows, a motion would have needed to been made to, and Abby, this has nothing to do with you wanting to be in or not. I'm just saying it requires a motion of the board to use an alternate person. That's the practice we've always had, and that's not just practice, it's law as far as I know, and that's what we've always done. Al may have more perspective because he's the chair.
No, I would agree.
No, I think Dan agreed. I mean, everybody agreed. I don't think there's anybody that disagreed. That's what I'm just, so Abby, yeah, if you did it at your board meeting, a properly warned board meeting, it was a motion, then you're good.
Okay, didn't realize that was the case as the chair of the board. Thank you.
You're welcome. Sorry. So we're all here. Really good turnout. Thank you very much. Are there any changes to the agenda? Okay. Last time we did public comment first, but I'd like to, if we could, hold off on that. And we'll do public comment at the end if nobody has a problem with that, and we'll add that as a change to the agenda. Is everybody okay with that? Anybody not? Okay. So the whole reason we're here is that we were asked by the West River Board to take another look at the SU budget. I guess West River had a pretty steep had some budgeting stuff, so they asked that we reopen the budget, which was voted in the affirmative at the last meeting. So we did have, Heidi spent a lot of time, and she gave us two documents. One is in this one. She gave us a proposed WCSU proposed budget with the MTSS. She gave us the super's budget with the account numbers and what makes up that account. So it's just as an example, under fiscal services, under 5141, there's a HR person who's an FTE, and the reduction of LG, previous business manager. So the explanations are there. There's a list of all the special ed staff directory. There is the annual budget revenue for the next one is, which one is this? Oh, this is revenue, I'm sorry. Money in, funding sources, MTSS expenditure budget. Again, an explanation, some budget information, and then the budget. Did I give you that?
There should be 4 different budgets.
Yeah, 4 budgets. And then Bob prepared at the end, we should have the cheat sheet. It was commented that we use a lot of, and there were some that were. No, on the end, the last thing is the abbreviations. It says ADM on top, average daily membership, academic support teacher. And then the other packet is
What I originally presented.
okay, and this was what was presented at the meeting this package, it says Windham Central, this is what was presented at the November SU meeting that was approved. So, Drew, I know that you prepared and we passed out, did you do yours in color too? Okay, so it's got black and blue and red. So these are,
Do you have extras of those pictures?
yeah, I'm sorry.
Thanks.
Yeah, I passed them out, but you were busy.
Yeah.
Oh, these two? This is
Yeah,
the-
so there's two different pieces of paper. There's something Drew sent earlier, and then he brought copies, and then also a summary, 2 paragraphs. Emily, and those of you on TV, I don't know how to share this. You don't have it electronically, do you? That you can.
If if somebody can refer, well, there's a lot of electronic the agenda has a lot of attachments, connection to all of the supporting docs.
Right.
I just want, if for all of us out there who have that, could you just make sure that we know which ones you're referring to, because there's a lot of them.
Okay, so we'll make sure whoever asks.
These are not in
Clear.
Right. So do we?
They all have a title.
Can you? I don't have access to my email. Bob, you got emailed this. Is there any? You
I did not
didn't
get emailed this. Oh.
No, you got emailed this.
Nope.
Yeah, he sent it to you and
Oh, today maybe?
Yeah.
I was at a conference all day. I have not
Okay.
been in my email.
Is there any way you can just? I don't know how to share this with people.
Yeah, I can go into my email. Hold on.
Sorry. Oh, now you gotta take TV off.
Yep.
Okay, so we were asked to reopen the budget, look at the budget. So we asked central office, Heidi and Bob, to prepare kind of an explanation of what everything is, where we are at. And Heidi, again, I know I talked to her Saturday and Sunday, so she put a lot of hours into trying to put together a bunch of answers to questions and to put everything together, so hopefully people could understand it a little better. It is a confusing budget because every year different grants allow us to do different things with different people, so money gets moved from one pot to another. We as a board over the years have approved, almost every year we approve movements and positions. If you all remember when Act 46 came down the pipe, we had the business office really ramped up because there was a lot of accounting stuff. We had to switch over to the new state system that everybody was going to have to switch over to, that they've now made optional instead of mandatory. And then after we get that all done, Lori and Bill recommended we reduce the business office because they didn't need as many positions, but one person transitioned into filling the HR position. So there's always been some movement. It's not always easy to track year over year, but it does make changes. So I guess I don't know how you all want to proceed. Do you want Lori to kind of run through everything at a high level again?
That might be Heidi.
Heidi.
That's gonna be tough.
We can ask
My
Lee.
answer to both Lori and Heidi.
Okay.
Just, no.
So
I was gonna say.
Yes, Dan.
I have a suggestion, a couple of questions that I'd like to get straightened out if we could beforehand.
Yeah,
Is that all right?
Yeah.
I wonder what the fund balance is in the West Rivers account, and whether any of that is being used to reduce their taxes for the coming year. I know that in Marlboro, we are using our fund balance to reduce that. So I'm just curious about that. Has West Rivers
Okay.
looked at the possibility?
So
of
hang on a
reducing-
second. I'm wondering if that's kind of germane to the discussion, because we can't discuss West River's budget because we have no say over that. We can only talk about the WCSU budget.
Even
So-
though they're the ones who have made the request and are
But the
asking for
SU
this?
board approved the request. So, and again, I'm not King Tut, so you all tell me, do you think that's an appropriate question, or do you not? I mean,
we can certainly answer it. I mean,
Okay,
yeah.
so go ahead then. You're comfortable answering that.
Yeah, so out of our special meeting on Tuesday, I won't say Lori. Heidi, correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe we came up with a draft budget still at this point, where we will allocate 200-ish thousand of the general fund balance towards this budget.
Yes.
So yes,
And what is the total of the fund balance?
total fund balance would be 1.3 million, and we actually have some additional that we would be banking towards this current fiscal year.
Okay, that answers my question. I'll bring it up later if I see a point to it. Thanks. Thanks, Al.
Is that all?
Yep.
Anybody else have any questions about the budget or the work that Heidi/Lori did? Anybody in TV land? Okay, Drew, I'm gonna let you speak. I don't know which one you want to talk to first, but if you could just tell us which paper you're referencing.
Colorful one.
And that has been sent to all board members just a moment ago, so everyone should have that now.
Okay, the colorful one. Go ahead, bud.
Yeah, so,
And the other thing, if you guys want to pull closer, I mean, you didn't have to be like way out of the way, but
can you throw things? You want to be out of the range.
okay, I don't throw.
So I appreciate the additional documentation that we received tonight around this budget. So as I said at the last meeting, I understand it is a difficult and complicated process to put these budgets together. It's certainly a difficult time for school budgets and town budgets and everybody else with the cost of living and whatnot that's going on in Vermont. So the reason why I really got into this kind of information quest is because Jamaica, who I represent, was looking at a 22% increase in their property taxes. And we were looking at having to make some pretty drastic cuts in our local budget, including the loss of academic programs for our kids. And I don't think it's unreasonable to request that the SU budget be looked at for reduction at the same time we're looking at our local budget, since it makes up a large portion of what we are passing along to the taxpayers. So the original, conversation was about what is there available in the SU budget? Yes.
Getting comments from people in the audience that they can't hear you that well.
Yeah. Yes.
I'll move up closer.
Thank you, buddy.
So the original was looking at what possibly could be reduced in the SU budget to ease the burden on our budget and therefore on the taxpayers. Understanding that the SU budget is developed long before we know a lot of the details about what we're going to be looking at locally. And some of the challenges that I had looking at the SU budget and understanding the SU budget is information. So I've been working now for several months trying to, month and a half probably, to get information about what we're spending our money on. And what you have is a synopsis of the questions, the answers, and then in some cases, what I could conclude with the available information that I could get from the website, from the answers I got, and from calculating from one place to the next, because again, like, the information is just not readily available. So there's a few things that I think are potential places where we could save money in the SU budget. And I guess I'll address whether West River has it, funding or not, or whether Jamaica can afford it or not. I think those actually are irrelevant at this point in the conversation. And what's more relevant is, are we being good stewards of the public's money? So if in fact there are places that we can cut, regardless of whether we have fund balance or not, we should be looking at doing that. So an important thing for people in Zoom land and the public to understand is the SU budget is using $1.1 million in fund balance. At the same time, we're increasing expenses. That was one of the things that caught my attention early. That was something that was easy to identify, and that we used $800,000 in fund balance last year when we added additional positions to the SU. So even though we have fund balance, it doesn't mean we should be irresponsible with our spending. That will eventually land completely on our taxpayers. So buying down our tax rate this year, which just for the record I support, will in fact create a cliff next year because we only have so much fund balance to push forward year after year. So it's not an excuse for irresponsible spending. So as I went through and I did ask for information about what we paid for different positions, it is almost impossible in our budget to get to that information. So like I said, I did request things like, what positions are funded, how they're funded, and I kind of went through what happened. One of the lines that caught my attention early on was in the superintendent's line. I don't know what the line item is. It's listed number 3 on my sheet here. Was a shift of the director of curriculum partially to the superintendent's pay line, which made me start thinking about, well, we had this conversation and we decided as an SU board, I was on the SU board at the time, that we weren't going to hire an assistant superintendent. So I did. I went back and I read the minutes, and the conversation that was had, which was very well documented in the minutes, was very clear that we did not approve additional administrative staff and that we wanted to focus our funds towards academic programming. So I asked some questions around that to clarify, did we in fact just create that position by shifting things around, which is why I asked for job descriptions. I did receive a couple of the job descriptions that I had asked for. One was the director of curriculum and then the curriculum coordinator. If you want to go back to those minutes, you'll see that the way it was presented to the board was, if we change Jen's position to an assistant superintendent, we will then need to hire a curriculum coordinator. Well, fast forward, we didn't change the position and we still hired the position. And if you look at the job description, we changed the job description to mostly look like an assistant superintendent. So I would say we've added an administrator. Others can disagree, but read through the job descriptions, read through the minutes, and I'm confident you'll come to the same conclusion that I did, that last year we used fund balance to offset adding an additional administrator in the process. I did continue to look and think Bob did a great job at putting together charts, which I know they're in the packet, about what positions are funded where, because that is also something that is very difficult to understand. It's kind of like a bouncy ball, where the position may be funded in one budget this year and a different budget next year, and they're apportioned separately and constantly change, which makes it really tough to follow where the funding comes from. So that was super helpful, but it was, I'm just curious what happened in 23 because it wasn't there, but it was helpful to understand kind of where those positions were. So there was a couple other things that caught my attention, which was a $191,000 administrative line item. And I know there's some greater detail on the sheet we got tonight as to where that money was, or where that position was shifted from. But again, it's additional administrative costs that are being added to our budget. Let's see here. What else do I want to highlight for you folks?
You want to do your recommendations?
I will, yep. I did have a couple questions about, some, as you dig through it, and I spent a lot of time looking through it, there's some inconsistencies that I found, like the Lori's position was paid at $120,000. We hired her on for 6 months, but we paid her $74,600, I believe. So my math says 6 months at 120 doesn't equal 74,000. So I'm a little curious about, like, where did that come from? How did that happen? There's an inconsistency. But again, I've spelled it out pretty clear, all the inconsistencies I found in it, including changing positions from para to teacher and then the line item goes up by $117,000. That doesn't make sense to me. I don't know what step in our current contract that teacher's gonna be on, but it seems like a lot. And then I guess my final kind of recommendation would be that we eliminate the new spending that we've had in this SU for the last 2 years. We eliminate the additional position that we created last year, which would be the curriculum coordinator. We eliminate the equity coordinator. I did put a letter that I received from a staff member. I've received calls, since this has been obviously very televised over the last couple months. I've received calls from a number of our staff members across multiple buildings. And what's been common in their conversation with me is that they do not want to speak publicly because they're fearful of retaliation. So I gave you one of the email communications that I put out anonymously. I know boards don't like anonymous communications, but I did promise the individual that.
Or just attributing it to you, so it's
Oh, you can attribute it to me if you'd like, but it references that I'm a teacher in there, and I am absolutely not a teacher.
I
As
actually
you
thought
discussed
it was from
earlier.
you, and I was wondering when you became a teacher, so.
No, sir. I am not a teacher. So it is, in my opinion, I think we can cut $160,000 out of this budget by eliminating the position, which again, I believe is filling more of the role of superintendent than anything else. Another $160,000 by eliminating our equity coordinator, which again, if you could read in the letter from one of our very well-spoken staff members, is being filled very easily by the staff. The OT position, again, it does not appear that you need to add $98,000 to that line. To remove 2 part-time people and add 1 full-time, it looks like that is overestimated, along with the home program line that is discussed earlier, which would be the $117,000 increase from para salary to a teacher salary. And then the new spending this year, which is the 3.9 additional positions. So total, there's literally hundreds of thousands of dollars in this budget that we could remove. There's positions that currently exist. So a special ed assistant position that's been vacant since '24. I would certainly not recommend at a time where we have financial challenges hiring positions that have been vacant for 2 school years. I think it is likely that we can probably do without those and tighten our belts a little bit. So that's what I have. You have it in front of you. It's the same exact discussion that we had a couple weeks ago. I just wrote it out so that people can take it, read it, and do with it what you would like.
Thank you. So, is there any questions, comments? Go ahead.
Yeah, for one thing, I think that when a budget is revised or turned down by the voters, I don't think it can specify what needs to be cut. I just want to make that clear. I believe that would be true for this as well. If this board decides to cut X dollars out, I don't think we are able to say we want this position, that position cut. We just say taking the money out. So
We can,
You absolutely can.
we can. The voters can't. So
right.
if we were presenting this to the public and the public said, I think you're crazy, your numbers are too high, they can't go line item. They don't have line item control, but they could say bottom line, $200,000. Now, if they said, for that $200,000, I want you to do away with the ABC program, and we choose not to, and we choose to do away with transportation or sports or something, that may show up the following March when you go to say, hey, vote for me.
That's correct. I just want to make sure that that when we're talking about the monies, then it will come back to this board to decide how those are
Right.
changed.
Yeah.
And the other thing is, just on your last page there, Drew, it looks like you're suggesting that we find $250,000 in savings. I wasn't sure whether you were suggesting the 826 or the 250.
I'm suggesting you find at least the $250,000, but I believe that, again, I've asked multiple times about what the new positions that are being added this year are for. The $250,000 is again, ballpark, because it's very difficult to understand what those positions cost. Those are the two new administrative positions that were created in the last couple of years.
Okay, I was just concerned, I didn't know which one you were suggesting, it's a little unclear.
Well, like I said,
Got it.
that was, I think there's more, but the two administrative positions I think are low hanging fruit.
Thank you, Dan. Anybody else from the board? Anybody on the board in TV land?
Rich?
Yeah.
I just think it would be
No, I'm
valuable
going
to-
there next.
Yeah.
Okay. What I was gonna suggest is it would be, you guys, you can all move up if you want to, because if you wanna say anything, nobody's gonna hear you. I think as a board, we would be very remiss to just say, we're gonna cut 6 positions, because again, as Drew said, some are required, some may not be spelled out. It says that you have to have Joe doing this position. So I'd like to ask Bob and the new Lori Heidi kind of review. Drew made some comments. They do have copies of that, and just kind of respond to, if you can respond to their comments. I will say one thing. I'd like to just say one thing. They have not done anything that has not been approved by this board. So any new positions or any positions that have been created by this board in public session, in open meetings by motions. We did have a discussion about before Bob was superintendent. I think that's the meeting you're talking about. Bob wanted to make some changes with an assistant position in curriculum, and that got voted down by the board. But I know when we voted for the new program with English, with the new language program, that we did have to make some changes because we have to support the staff with that new program. And that program was supported overwhelmingly by all the boards. So, and again, it's hard to point out to all, there's so many moving parts of this budget. So how do you guys?
Sure. I'll start. I guess a couple things I want to say. It feels like that a lot that's been said in public meetings may have led the public to believe that there's some malfeasance or some unethical conduct happening in the way that funding is identified in budgets. And I just want to say for Lori before, for Heidi now, for me, for Bill previously, I think that's wildly unfair. And I just want to be clear that I think a district budget is relatively simple. There's revenues and expenditures, and the two numbers meet at the end and you have a budget, right? And it's pretty easy to understand because positions are in general locally funded. Special ed has been taken out of the districts and put in the SU. IT has been taken out of the districts and put in the SU, and a variety of other functions that happen at the SU level are in there as well. And I just think that because the SU budget works really differently, and this is something I've learned obviously in my first couple of years here, is that because of the way that funding comes in, it is really, really complicated. And I understand Drew's frustration with not being able to understand where this stuff is coming from, and it does move around. But I would counter the suggestion that it's some kind of a shell game. It's really what I would call thoughtful accounting. And Lori set us up really well with the ESSER money coming in, and this board had presentations from her years ago when the ESSER money started about her creating the opportunity to use ESSER money in a creative way to fund already existing ventures that allowed, because you could supplant with ESSER that you can't with other types of grants. And that allowed the SU to build up a little bit of a nest egg through that time. And because other districts who are going to spend that money on staff right away, on all new additions, we're going to face a significant financial cliff. We heard about that nationwide, the financial cliff. And the way that Lori and Bill thought about that, and I want to make sure we're giving them full credit because I had nothing to do with it, is that they laid out this ramp so that as the SU ventured out of that sort of time when money was flowing in from the feds, that instead of having a cliff, they were much more thoughtful about how the money was being utilized so that they would be more of a ramp. So the utilization of the fund balance monies that the SU board voted on this year was actually entirely part of that.
And that was voted on by the board at a meeting in Dover
Yeah.
to follow Lori's plan. It's nothing that was just
Right,
Lori.
that's what I'm saying, it's not nefarious, this was all planned that way, and so, and I will agree with Drew that there have been new positions added, and I think, I'll start with the special ed world, because I think that's the one that people struggle with the most, including myself, trying to understand it, because there's all different kinds of funding sources. If, sorry, I have to admit somebody here, something that might appear to be new might have previously been grant funded that now is going into local money. And so it appears a different place in the budget, or appears in the budget for the first time because it was in a separate fund before. And so what might look like new positions being added are often just the reallocating of resources to get those positions. And sometimes there are new positions, which is, special ed is a complicated venture. And Stephanie is online here if people want to hear from her at some point, but she's tasked with every fall to develop a prediction for a year and a half for how IEPs are going to be written for existing kids and kids yet to be identified. And that includes services for pre-K students and estimating 3-year-olds who are coming into the system for the first time, and services provided to our students who are responsible for them, whether they attend our pre-Ks or not. So if they're in private pre-Ks or other pre-Ks, we have to staff those with people to do, whether it's OT, PT, special ed services, whatever. We're sending people to, she showed me the list of where all the people go. I was like, our employees are going to all these places? She's like, yeah, that's crazy. And it's crazy because it's just not something I'm used to thinking about. And I'm sure it's not something that taxpayers or even boards maybe are used to thinking about. But it is the nature of how special education is structured, with the complexities of the rules that fall along with that. Stephanie does not make the decision of what type of staff gets assigned to a kid and what kind of services get assigned to a kid. That happens at the team level, which is teachers, administrators, counselors, whoever else is involved, parents, and special educators as well. And so that process makes those determinations, and then, she has to fund in her budget those positions to do so. And so it's a moving target. Kids move in, kids move out. Kids go to placements, kids come out of placements. Placements require transportation. They don't require transportation. We're paying a parent to transport. We're paying the driver with one of our cars to transport. A kid comes off services for speech, another kid goes on for OT. And so it's such an ebb and flow that it's incredibly hard to nail down sometimes even in the moment, never mind a year and a half in advance. And so the creativity that they utilize and how they fund which positions with which money and which ones end up in the local budget that you see here, it's fluid. I guess that's the best way to put it, it's fluid. So that's special education. The equity coordinator, I think, is an incredibly valuable position. I'm not going to editorialize on anything in our national politics, but I will say that I think this is a critical time to have that work continue in our school system. I will say that as Rich pointed out, the curriculum coordinator position was added as we rolled out a brand new, very heavy lift curriculum called EL for literacy K-8, and teachers needed lots of support and planning for the implementation of that. And so we needed some staff to do that. I think when you have a new initiative to address a significant problem, and our literacy performance was a significant problem, and Jen incredibly aptly helped set this all up for Renee to take on when the position rolled in July 1. You could unfund that, and you can see what happens, but you're not going to get the results that you would have gotten if you have it. And when we're talking about kids reading, I don't know if there's anything more important. And this is what I pitched to the SU board last year when we talked about this. Like, if we get every kid to read grade level in their third grade, then we have set every kid up for success. Opportunities to graduate on time, to escape generational poverty, for all the things that this is why we're here. This is the essence of why we're here. So I wouldn't call it low-hanging fruit at all. I think that's an irresponsible way to call it. I think it's essential work. So I also think that you know, regarding Jen's position and the work that she does, you know, as I wrote out in the 4 pages of questions that Drew had asked and I had answered already with numerous attachments, again, trying to be transparent, trying not to hide things. I described the history of that position in a nutshell. I mean, very brief, I'm sure there's a lot more to it. The number of requirements from the feds and the states tied around grants and how we use them and school improvement, and all the reporting mechanisms. I mean, I can't quantify that and say that it's tripled or multiplied by 10 since Jen rolled into this position in 2016. But I can tell you that her job is not what it was in 2016 when she rolled into it. She does a lot of compliance. I wouldn't call her an assistant superintendent. I'm not even sure I'd call her director of curriculum. I think I'd call her a compliance officer. Is it legally required to have that position? No. But on the other hand, if we don't do it, we'll be so out of compliance with so many things, we lose funding. So like, sometimes you got to spend a little to get a lot. And I think, so this is a thoughtful plan that was put into place for all these different moving parts: special ed, AST, curriculum, EL, all of it. And it's complicated because of how the SU budget is structured, and how the revenue flows from multiple places. I'll get off my soapbox on that part, but I just, it's not the same. It's not as simple as a district. It's complicated. And just because it looks like there's something that's here, it looks like there's nothing there that offsets it, it doesn't mean that there's anything illegal or unethical happening. It just means that maybe the full breadth of it isn't understood by people. I think Heidi has tried to really do an excellent job with the papers that she's laid out for you today to try to explain things better. She's new, obviously. I'm only a year in, and so I think we're both learning. But I would say that we're learning in a way that's ethical, and we're not doing anything that's sleazy. We're trying to make sure we have the resources we need to educate kids in our SU. So her documents, I think, will outline line by line where things are going. It might answer some of the questions that Drew still has outstanding. And so I'm hoping that will address some of that stuff as well. And I will leave you with this. As I've talked to the SU board about this, one of the things that we took on this winter was an audit of our MTSS systems. I've just barely received the report back from that. I've not had a time to, literally on Wednesday, I've not had time to unpack it, to sit with it, to reflect on it. Had a brief conversation with my cabinet about it yesterday. And there could be some structural things that come out of that could lead us to a place where there's some savings. I don't know. I don't want to speak to that yet. But I do know that I would like to be able to give the opportunity to follow that through and finish that work of the audit, to really look at what we're doing or not doing, and then come back to the SU board with more data on that. And the last thing I'll leave you with, and I know this is going to go against what Drew is asking for, reductions. But in fact, in the time since this budget was passed, we had a data breach that on our website, which impacted some staff information. We followed the process with VSBA. We followed the process with an attorney and with Experian. We provided credit protection for folks. In the end, it was human error, but I'll say this: our website, as Drew can attest, isn't easy to circulate around. It's not designed well for people in the public to really be able to access information. So when this happened, and I met with IT and we talked about the website and the challenges to how we do file sharing, because it's all in Google Drives, and you put the wrong file in the wrong drive, and all of a sudden it's public facing, which is in essence what happened. We talked a lot about, like, what do we need to do with this website? This thing is old, it's antiquated, it's not user friendly for us, it's not user friendly for the public. We know that 4 or 5 years ago, 3 or 4 years ago, River Valley spent 30 to 40 grand on a website that's really just informational. It doesn't have file sharing. So if you asking me to reopen the budget, I would suggest that we consider $50,000 to $75,000 on website work to rehab that. We're out of compliance with ADA on our website. We open ourselves up to suits there. So not suggesting you add that in, but I'm saying that there are needs that have been uncovered since the time this budget was actually approved.
Thank you, Bill.
Yep. Sorry I was so lengthy.
First, before I touch upon a couple of the things that Drew pointed out, I just want to say that in my first 6 months of being director of finance, I'm sure I've made mistakes. And I want to say that if it feels like I have been untransparent,
Okay.
or as if I'm hiding anything, I apologize because it may just be my lack of experience. Certainly this has been a learning curve for me. I worked with Lori Garland extensively on the SU budget as we put it together because it is so complicated and it takes so much time, and I didn't even have a clue as to how complicated it was going to be to try to understand how to put the SU budget together. When it comes to how people are funded, and I did explain a little bit of this in the WSU budget information sheet that I wanted to put together because it's complicated. I want to share an example of how things get divided up and put under different places. I'm going to use Greg, who I know is on here, as an example. Director of Operations. There's a lot of things Greg does in his job, and some of them include overseeing transportation for special ed, which is not a part of the super's budget. Some of it includes his oversight of the child nutrition program, which is not in the super's budget. And so when it comes to how we fund the position, it's actually really important to the state of Vermont on how we code it in our electronic software, financial software. Because all of our information gets pulled electronically from the state of Vermont a couple times a year, several times a year. And they use that information, as some of you may have seen from the presentation that Zoe Saunders did for the governor. She used a lot of data. And part of where she gets all that data is from pulling it from all of the people that use e-finance, and then those that don't use this particular software, they have to upload their information differently. And what they do is they take that information and they say, how much does a school district pay for transportation? How much does a school district pay for mental health? And well, it's by far not accurate, because I went to one of those listen and learn meetings where they tried to say, this is how much mental health costs in a school district. And I was saying, you're not counting nurses, you're not counting the principal, you're not counting everybody else. Like, it is hard to understand on an AOE level of how much it costs to do certain things. But so we try to code things in such a way that they find out this is how much special ed transportation might be costing. And not only is it the drivers or the hired companies that drive our students for special ed, it's also someone that oversees transportation. So the CNP, the child nutrition program, there is people that work behind the scenes to pull that information together, and they're paid out of certain funds of money that do not come out of the local funds. So Greg, his piece of that, Donna Albin, who does some of that, her piece is in there. And so some of that changes on a year-to-year basis. Who is doing what, depending on what's being requested from the state, or who's moving into a different position. So that is part of what is attributable to that. When it comes to our title funds, it's really important piece is that we cannot supplant what's already being done. And I tried to explain this again in this sheet, that the federal laws don't allow title funds to pay for current federally mandated positions. So we can't pay for our math teacher out of federal funds because it's mandated by the federal government. We can use funds to pay for academic support teachers, because while there was different acts that passed that encouraged or required MTSS multi-tiered support systems to be put in place. It wasn't a federal mandatory program, so you could use federal funds to help fund that, which is being used for intervention. Again, that's why part of the positions are funded through the federal grants. If we remove those positions from the grants, we can never put them back into the grants. So we've been careful to not remove people, or positions, I should say, to retain those federal grants for those programs, for intervention for students in classrooms. So I hope that explains a little bit of what I have learned and what I have faced as to why things are in different places. I will touch upon the fact that we moved the Director of Curriculum's position, .2, to administration, and it was a conversation that Lori and I had based on the fact that Jen has taken on so much compliance of overseeing how the grant funding is put together and trying to cover what the SU uses. I have to say today, I received an email saying that, lucky me, I'm going to be monitored for all the federal grants we've got this year. And Lori had predicted this, and it's because of Jen's position as the Director of Curriculum that I'm feeling better than I should be feeling, because she has spent so much time documenting and getting her principals to document everything that's being done for professional development that complies with all the grant requirements. It is a full-time job doing that piece of it, or pretty much a full-time job. So that conversation Lori Garland and I had before she left, and I said that makes sense that she should have a .2 in administration, because that compliance piece is really above and beyond, and the state AOE should understand what we're spending for that kind of work that's being done for the federal grant piece. So those are the pieces that I wanted to respond to. The other thing I also wanted to say was regarding the ESSER funds and the way Lori Garland set us up. I know that recently Rich had wondered how we were doing in that respect. We have $700,000 that we still have set aside, that Lori had planned. It would be a 2-year phase out of those funds that were accumulated for our reserve fund. There probably will be a little bit more depending on how this year shakes out, but she expected it to be a 2-year use of funds to help with the tax rates as everything was reevaluated and we move forward without ESSER funds. So that is right on track to where we expected it to be. Lori did a great job in that respect. And, you know, I can go back through the line by lines that I have written out. I think, Drew, that if you look at the line by line descriptions I gave, that may answer a lot of the questions about the funding. But I would like to say to anybody who's listening, I am more than happy to have you make an appointment and come into my office and sit down, and I'm happy to share any information with anybody with specific questions. I am learning. I'm working hard at learning. I am not perfect and I don't have all the answers yet, but I am trying to fulfill this position and what Lori Garland had set us up for. So I can speak more specifically if anybody has more questions.
Just a couple real quick comments, kind of a few to Drew. Bob and Heidi, I don't think there's anybody on these boards or on this board that thinks there's, you know, we've all been through the budgeting with the SU stuff and the special ed for a lot of years, and it gets more and more confusing the more and more we go on. I know compliance is a really big issue because I remember Abby hammering that in about if we don't have the compliance and that. Emily, Dan, you may remember, wasn't there one year we actually almost had to pay some funds back because there was some record keeping was not where it should have been, which could cost you some money when the feds say, hey, we're gonna take some money back or not withhold money. I know that, and I think people need to understand, this is, again, I joked about it last time about our crystal balls. but there are no crystal ball, and you're doing the budget a year and a half out. And I think that there is fund balance to be able to use is a testament to that although we budget it, it doesn't mean we spend it. And I think the central office has done a pretty good job of that, just because we do wind up with a little bit of a fund balance every year, or some fund balance. And, you know, it seems like every year we have to do more and more, such as drive kids or pay parents to drive their kids to school. I'm sorry.
Yeah, Emily, yeah.
Okay, Emily, let me just finish one more thought. And how we fund, spending the money. And again, I just want to stress that nothing that has been done has not been approved or approved by the board. There's no position that's filled or moved, or it's always come to the board. So again, Drew, I do understand it is really hard to look at, because some things got done it's always a year before we're doing it. We're doing it in November to affect July of the following year. And it is confusing. It is a lot of work. And I will shut up and let Emily.
First of all, I'm so sorry. I didn't not mean to interrupt you. I put my hand up just because I wanted to speak next. If that was
Bob wanted
possible.
me to shut up.
No, I was not trying to shut you up. So that was not my intention. But thank you for calling on me. I appreciate being able to follow what you were saying, Rich, because I agree 100% with everything you just said. I also want to acknowledge a couple of things. And one is that we are in an incredibly challenging time right now. And the challenge for the school board members and what we're dealing with is minuscule compared to the staff that we're dealing with. And I mean staff in the buildings, at the central office, everything else. Everything is so so rocky right now from every angle. So I just want to acknowledge that and make sure that everybody recognizes that we're all doing our best. Going back to our budget and the development of our budget, for many, many years, I have sat on this board and on our local boards, and we have been asking the administration to develop budgets based on our students' needs. And that is what we've asked for this time, and that was what we were presented. We, as you very clearly said, Rich, we go through the budget and through a process, the process that is spelled out in statute. We go through that process, and we come to a conclusion. And we did that same thing this year. And I just want to end this by saying thank you both to Bob and Heidi and all the staff that are, I can't see who everybody's in the room, but I see who's online. I just want to say thank you for all the effort you did. You did what we asked you to do. And I want you to know how much we appreciate the effort you're putting in. That being said, scrutiny of the budget is welcome. We should be scrutinizing our budget from every angle, and there's a time and place to do it, and we should be doing it from beginning to end. And we are doing that, and there's absolutely nothing wrong with doing that. But at the same time, I want to make sure that we know about the boundaries around that scrutiny, and to make sure that we recognize the hard work and effort put into this, both from the staff and from the board. So, and maybe I'm saying, I'll end this by saying, right now I'm sitting up in Montpelier because I have dual roles, and there is so much unknown, even for us, that we're trying to grapple with, because we just don't know what the proposals that are coming to us are. And that spills down into the local level. There's no question about it. The challenges that we're dealing with right now from federal funding, whether we're going to see federal funding continue, in the flowing into the state in the way we expected it, that's really, really difficult right now. So I just want to also say everybody has to have patience, like us up here and you folks in the buildings. It's a really difficult time, and I think we need to make sure that we are recognizing that right now, and we'll do the best job we can as we move forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Emily.
I just want to kind of follow up on what you're talking about, Emily, is that anybody who's paying attention to the state and what their Education Funding Commission is looking at right now, I think it's not I think it's a reasonably safe bet to say we'll be looking at a different formula in a year from now, which is one of the main reasons why in Marlboro we decided not to sit on our fund balance. They've even talked about, is it even legitimate to have a fund balance or whatever? So from our perspective, since we have no idea where we're going next year, we were not uncomfortable using our monies up to reduce our budget for the current year and then see where it goes from there. So, so my sympathies are with you, Emily, for having to figure that out for us.
It's almost like you get punished because if you spend your money wisely, even though you budgeted, and then they're gonna take it away, not let you maybe use it the next year where you can't budget so wisely because things happen, yeah. I'm sorry, are you done?
I am, yes.
I just heard that on the news, that a lot of bureaucrats will spend their budget down to nothing or overspend so they can justify more money the following year, where several times at town meeting, we've complimented our powers to be for not spending all the money, and maybe like doing something different. And one of the things I will want to comment, and Bob brought it up and we missed it a couple times, is he did request of the board at budget time to use some fund balance to have a study done to see if there are other ways to save money. And Drew, I do want to thank you too, because I've done so many budget meetings, we've done so many WCSU budget meetings, and we've never had anybody. Sometimes we barely have enough board members. And I do thank you, because bringing attention to this, I don't think I've ever been to a WCSU meeting where we've had this many people. So it is really good, and then people can start to understand. And who's got their hand up?
Alan Block.
Yeah, Alan, we're not taking public yet, okay, sir?
Thank you.
Okay, but we will get to you. I got your name written down on my list. So hang on one second. Is there any other comments from people that haven't commented yet on the board, on the SU board? I can't see anybody up there. I'm going to open it up to comments from board members who aren't on the WCSU board but are on a local board. Abby, Drew, I'm going to come back to you. We'll let other people speak. I think Eli's on the River Valleys board, and anybody who's not on the WCSU board but is on a board. Does anybody like to make any comments? Don't see anybody. Drew, do you like to follow up?
Yeah,
Hang on. I'm sorry.
Alan had
Who?
Alan had his hand up there.
Alan?
Alan what?
No, he's not a board member.
Oh, I got you.
Yeah, he's public.
Yeah.
Okay, Abby.
Yes,
Go ahead.
sorry, I just, all I will say is, I understand I'm not being, recognized, but if there is a motion and a vote, that I at least have an opportunity to have on the record what I would vote. So that's all I'd like to say. Thank you.
Yeah, that's why we're letting you speak, Abby. We're letting all the board members who aren't on WCSU have a chance to speak.
Yes, I understand, but my chance to speak, I would like to say that when the board votes, I would like for the record, my vote, what I would have voted if I was allowed to vote, just be noted in the record. That's all.
Okay, thank you. Drew, I'm sorry, go ahead.
I appreciate the conversation about the director of curriculum. I will say that there's no compliance listed in the job description for that position. And maybe the confusion is that when I asked what the job was and I have the job description, that's not what is actually in the job description. So maybe we need to revisit the position or the job description that was updated the month before you guys approved the new position. This was a January update, 2024. But again, compliance is not here. So again, from my place trying to put this together, there's nothing that would suggest that we're hiring a compliance officer, not a special ed But I do appreciate the clarification.
No, and I will say, the one thing I will say about Windham Central staff that I've seen going way back to when there was just 2 or 3 of them in there is so many people do things that would be very easy for them to say, it's not my job description. And I think we have some really good staff and we've been very fortunate. We have had some staff that, years ago we had to ask not to be staff anymore, but I think currently we've been very fortunate. And again, it is a very complicated, very difficult thing to kind of bring it all together. So what I'd like to ask is, I think that we really do a disservice to our students if we were to say to Bob or to say, we're going to remove this position, we're going to cut that position. I know this just came out today. Drew did send it to me early. I had a bunch of meetings, and then with my technological skills, I couldn't open the stupid thing. I called Drew and he told me I was just being stupid because I should be able to open it. It was a PDF. And so he did send it. So I printed it before I left the office. I didn't really have a chance to read it. I think his summary is pretty good where he's making some suggestions. I think we do a disservice if we just say, Bob, cut, we're just going to cut 250. I'd like to know if there were any reductions, what that looks like and what it would take. I don't know how anybody else feels. I don't feel that right now I would be ready to vote to just cut an arbitrary number or cut a position. Drew makes a point about a couple different positions. How do we want to deal with this? Do we want to say to Bob, can you look at this and maybe get back to us beginning of next week? I know Bob wants to meet with his cabinet and talk about the report he just got, and that may be some changes to us. What do you all as a board, how would you like to move forward?
Me, I'm ready to make a motion to cut, but you guys can
I
figure
can't
out.
stop you from making a motion.
No,
Oh,
you can't.
no, I'm sorry.
Yeah, I'll make a motion, we cut the equity coordinator. I was
Okay.
looking for a reduction. That's what I must maybe misunderstood
Okay.
when it first came out.
Well,
That
hang
we
on
were
a
looking-
second.
Yeah.
You made a motion to cut the equity coordinator.
Yep.
Okay, is there a second to that motion? Anybody in TV land?
Rich, seconding it just allows us to discuss it.
Correct.
Discuss it, right?
Well,
It can still be voted on?
and then we would have a vote.
Okay.
But if nobody seconds it, the motion dies.
The motion dies for lack of a second. So, is everybody pretty clear? Does anybody like to second that motion? Okay, I'm gonna
Could it
say,
be
oh,
made at a later time?
I'm sorry, could you just,
It was Peter.
Peter, I'm sorry, I couldn't hear you very well.
Could the motion, sorry, I've got a lot of noise going on where I am. Could the motion be remade at a later time if it does not get a second now?
Yes, yeah,
Thank you.
okay. So, I didn't hear a motion, I didn't get a second on that, I'm gonna say the motion dies. Yes,
I'd just like to speak to the importance of the curriculum coordinator, reiterating, if you roll out a whole new curriculum as we did, and I was very skeptical of it, I remember that, thinking, what about all those teachers that have been teaching their own curriculum for years and they have to relearn? But we did that and all the schools on some level accepted it, and I just feel like you can't do that to the staff and the teachers and have them say they have to have a new curriculum and not give them the support that they need. So I don't want to touch that one.
and again, I don't think we as a board should say to Bob, cut a person, or cut this person, or cut this program. I think what we could do is we could ask for, if this board feels that there is savings somewhere that we can reduce the budget, my suggestion would be that we ask Bob to look at, is there any place that you could reduce anything and come back to us? We could also say, Bob, can you reduce the budget $200,000? we could also say, Bob, increase the budget 200,000 because it sounds like we need something else. We've voted to reopen the budget, so we can reopen the budget. Again, I really feel that it's not my place to say cut a person or cut this position, but I do think that it is the board's place to ask, is there a place, or to have them come back. And again, I don't think it's fair. I think Drew made some really good points in his paperwork, in his presentation, the colorful presentation, but really nobody had a chance to, Bob didn't have a chance to look at it.
Hey, Rich.
Yes.
It's Allison. I'm feeling like you tonight, sir. I've been looking for the raise my hand thing for 5 minutes and I can't find it. So my hand is up, and I did want to just kind of piggyback on what you were saying and just say that I agree with your approach on this right now. I would definitely, I just like the idea of bringing it back to Bob and Heidi and maybe asking if, having them take a look through it, considering, just considering what Drew's looking for and, all of the points that he was making tonight, just sort of acknowledging that and honoring that and going back through and seeing if there is anything that we can find.
Okay, thank you. And somebody's got their hand up.
Peter.
Peter, go ahead again, sir.
I'm wondering if we can get a comment from my phone is not cooperating. If we could get comment from Heidi or Bob, if they have any, on some of the other things that Drew suggested in here. We talked a lot about the director and the coordinator positions, but there is also in here reducing estimated salary increase for the OT position, the home program estimated increase, and basically 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7. Particularly, I'm interested in 6, which is do not fill the assistant director of special ed. I'm just curious on if they have any comments about those right now. Thank you.
Thank you. That's a very good question. You have.
I'll try. Well,
You also have Stephanie on, right?
sure. How about this? I'll take a shot at it because I'd like to be able to understand it too. And then if Heidi or Stephanie want to jump in and tell me I'm wrong, is that okay?
Yeah, is that okay with everybody?
All right. So we're all learning on this. So,
Okay.
all right. The OT position, the way I understand this is that we currently have 2
We
codas,
have 3 codas.
3 codas. The idea is, I guess.
And 1 OT.
And 1 OT. And apparently 2 of the codas may be leaving.
They have, yes.
And so the idea is, and a coda is an assistant to the OT person, right? It's an assistant.
They don't have the same education.
So think of it as a teacher and a para, if you will. So the OT is the teacher, the coda is the para. So if 2 codas leave, the logic is that to replace them with another coda.
Another.
With an OT.
Okay.
And so that those dollar amounts are going to be, I'm not going to say exactly the same because they're probably not exactly the same, but they're going to be similar, right?
Mm-hmm. The OT makes more than the 2 codas.
Right. And they're in 2 different lines though.
They are, because
So-
they're 2 different kinds of.
Classifications of
Right,
positions. So what shows up as an increase is the coda being added to the coda line.
The OT being
I'm sorry,
added to
the
OT line.
OT.
And they're 2.
I'm close. Hold on. I got this, Heidi. The increase you see in the OT line is the OT being added. And then in the line where you would expect to see the associated decrease because of the codas is a line that's also shared by paras. And because there are some additional needs, especially for some other para positions, those are going in at the same time. So the reduction because of the codas is being offset by some additions with some paras. So you don't see the what would look like, not 1-to-1 maybe, but a transition.
Right,
You don't see it. So
And there's also a raise for the staff because those staff have the para educators in the SU already have a contract.
we know their negotiations on it.
Right.
So I think that's why it looks like there's an add there and no subtraction somewhere else. It's because the line where it's subtracted from has other adds. Yeah?
Yes.
All right. The second one is the home program. So this position, I believe, was a para position that turned into a special educator position. And so you see an addition in one place and a subtraction in another place. And again, because the para subtraction is in a place where maybe there's some other adds, it's hard to see. At least that's how I understand
Right,
it.
there's not another para, but that para became a teacher for the consistency of the program.
We didn't replace the para,
Mhm.
but we in essence added a teacher and took away a para. So there is a net add there for sure. And I think that's what you're referencing. I don't know if this dollar amount he has is correct when you subtract out the para, but there is an add. I don't know what number 5 is about. I'm just not sure what that's referencing.
Remove the 56 and 37 that cannot be found. That cannot be found in the budget.
Drew, can you clarify that?
Yeah, so I took the information on the total number of increase in the budget, and then I subtracted the pieces that I was told were added to the budget. There's a $56,000 that just doesn't
Could it be in raises?
doesn't go anywhere. So the numbers that I got back for information from the SU as to where the money was going didn't add up to the bottom line. It was $56,000 short. So
From certain lines? You thinking it's from para lines? Is that what you're saying?
So the information about when I asked what the increase, the 500 and whatever it was, $50,000 increase was, I got a reply that if this is what it was for, well, when you add up the answer, it doesn't come up to the 500,000, it's $56,000 short. So wherever that was going, it's not in the.
All right. Let me see if I understand this. I think what he's saying is this number here
Oh, I see.
doesn't equal the addition of these numbers. On this right here, you're talking about.
You're saying
And
it's
it's 56,000 off.
You started. I'm gonna add this up just because I wanna figure
You
this
want
out.
to, are we sure we're on the same section?
No, but.
Drew, did you see the section Bob was pointing at? I don't know. Is that the section you're talking about? Just to make sure we're on the
This is
same
the last
page.
page of your questions. This bigger box right here.
Yeah. So.
It starts with staffing increase total cost. In my response.
Right, so the question was, is $559,000 in increased spending? And then the answer was in blue. So when you look at the new costs, it doesn't add up to.
Oh, are you looking at your sheet?
Yeah, my sheet's cut and pasted off.
Okay, which section is that?
This section.
So
It's which
here's the
number?
question.
New professional staff. So are you referring to your like 228.60? Is that what you're referring to? New staff,
No,
oh,
he's talking
there's
about this.
56,000.
He's talking about this right here. These numbers don't add up.
Oh.
Yeah.
And
That's
so
what he said,
3.9
2,559.
paras is 173,666. And then the 333,000 is made up of 3.9 paras, which cost 173,666. The home program person, there's an increase of that salary of 47,394. Then there's the professional, other professional staff, that's 112,319. That makes up the 333,379. And then we have health insurance, new and increased. So again, you have to remember, employees change health insurances, so that is hard to give you a specific number, but 118,790. Then we have VSBA insurances, that is approximately 43,456. Some of that, I had some increase of the child, what is that, child contribution? Child care contribution that I probably lumped in there because that was a few $1,000s. So the health insurance, the negotiations and raises and retirement increases, I think I separated that out when we put it on your sheet.
134.
Yeah, and then the benefits were 118,790. Tuition goes down 60,191. Transportation goes down 10,329. And then the non-health insurances increases were 43,456. So you're saying I'm off by 56,000?
Yes, that's what I'm saying.
Okay,
When
let's just.
I went through and trying to understand it,
All right.
I came up with.
You can just add it like that. It says $559,579.
But, I mean, she's the spreadsheet right here. I'm looking at those numbers all put together and it's 559,579, which is the number at the bottom where it says total. So I don't, that number's different than what?
I can, I will revisit it, but.
Okay.
Yeah.
Let's talk on the phone. So let's try to work things. I think that what she's listed here does add up to 559. So if there's a different number you're looking at.
What's in blue is what I'm looking at.
So where does the $191,000 in new administrative costs show up?
New administrative costs, the professional positions are 1.5, and that total cost, let me just add them up down here. You're not talking about the paras, you're talking about the professional.
Like the new administrative line is $191,960 in it.
Can you tell me what line that is, just
It's
because?
at the top of the MTSS budget, it's like the third line down.
What's the account code?
Oh, hang on, I gotta find it. There's too many pieces of paper here.
Yeah, I agree.
191,970, that one?
Yep.
Yeah. That's this.
5141.
There you go. I went for one in that budget.
Okay, so I've typed in the curriculum coordinator, moved from the funds where she was paid out of the federal grants, and the coordinator position,
Which is the assistant special ed director.
right, which was in the IDAB grant. That was a position that was held and vacated during the fiscal year
That's right.
24. That's the two positions in that line.
So that's new spending in this budget this year. It
In
may
that
not be
line.
new spending in this district, but it's new spending in this budget this year.
It is they're both new in the local funds. They were both grant funded.
So why are those not showing up in the explanation as to why the budget went
Well,
up?
so my explanations were about new positions in the SU, but definitely if I could redo it, thinking about it now, I would have typed that out differently. But when I was writing that narrative, I was thinking about positions that we didn't have already in the SU.
Yeah, so it's a funding shift. Looks like it appears as new. It isn't really new, just newly funded that one place. It was.
But you're absolutely right. I should have identified that in my narrative.
So which
So
which
that-
one is that?
He's talking about the curriculum.
No, but I know, but Peter asked
Oh.
That wasn't,
specifically.
it wasn't on
We
this
did not
list.
find that.
Okay,
And then the sixth one, that's a possibility, and that's why I'm asking the board to wait on me finishing the results of that MTSS audit. It's entirely possible that could be. I just want to be able to go through that process. So it is currently vacant. It was the person who was in it left in March or April of last year. We couldn't fill it in the short term. It was already budgeted for this year. We advertised for it in that end of spring into summer season, but it's the wrong time to be looking for someone with that level of expertise. We didn't get any qualified applicants, so we kind of just sat on it with the idea that we could potentially get someone for the following year. But those jobs are currently being done by other people through stipends. The roles that are being done are other people are doing that work through stipend payments, which is using up a pretty good chunk of that money this fiscal year. Right. So, because the work still had to get done.
so Peter, I don't know where you went, but does that answer your questions? Where did Peter go?
I can see him, he's at the bottom.
For them, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes, thank you both Heidi and Bob. I think that at this time I would like to make a motion to take out the assistant, hold on, let me get the correct title here. The assistant director of special ed position out of the budget.
Peter, your motion is to take the assistant director of ed out of the budget.
Oh, special, yeah, special.
And you know which line item he's talking about,
Yeah.
and how much is that line item?
Yeah.
Peter, hang on 1 second, please.
Yep, of course.
It's embedded in it's just.
Just so that everybody knows what we're talking about.
number less? Or just put this down?
So there is 100,000, okay,
That's for two positions,
okay.
so I'm just gonna separate it out.
Okay, so if you take that out. Okay, so do we have so Heidi's figuring out what that number actually would be if we were to do that. Is there a second to Peter's motion to take out the Assistant Director of Ed out of the budget? I don't know what that number is yet, but,
I will second that for the purposes of discussion.
okay, Allison, you seconded that. Just 1 second. There was a question that kind of portrayed, that fits to this, and Peter, I'll give you the first opportunity, but Rachel had a question about this spot, so go ahead.
Is that position an assistant to Stephanie?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay,
So she's currently doing all that work with jobbing in other people paid per diem or whatever.
okay, Peter, so since you made the motion, Allison, you seconded the motion. Peter, do you want to speak to that, or have you said everything you want to, or we usually give the person who makes a motion first dibs?
Yes, I would like to take a moment to speak on that. I hear what Tebow is asking for us to wait for his application of the MSS system. However, I think due to where we are at with the budget and with the cuts that the West River Board is having to make, that at this time it would be, since that position has not been filled, to cut it. And if with Mr. Tebow's evaluation that he's having done of the system, if they come back and they say that this was a mistake, then I'm very open to hearing about that later and possibly adding it in for next year's budget. But then,
Okay, Peter, thank you, sir. Allison, you seconded the motion, so you get to speak seconded.
Yeah, I don't want to budget on the fly. I don't really like that. You've already made the suggestion that we can, or I shouldn't say I don't really like that. That's not where my comfort level is. You've already made the suggestion that maybe Bob and Heidi can take another look at things, see where areas of opportunity might be on their end, where it might make the most sense. I also don't like making specific line item requests, just like you had also suggested. I don't know if there's a time crunch here because West River's got a vote or what's going on with regard to that. But if we have the time, if we can, I would ask that we wait before we make any specific budget requests tonight. Let Bob and Heidi go back, take a look, and then come back to us. That's all I ask here.
Okay, thank you. Bob or Al or whoever, what is the timeline for West River that they need a number?
So they have a meeting February 10th, at which point they have to basically adopt that night budget. So I guess that's the timeline.
Okay. Is there any other discussion on this? And just for your knowledge, it's around $85,000 to remove that position would be around $85,000 plus some benefits.
I basically am agreeing with Allison. I have some comfort with either a motion or even just direction to ask the administration to take a look and see if there are any savings to be realized, given the situation that not just the West River Board, but all the boards are looking hard at their budgets this year. But I am, not comfortable with naming positions or even amounts of money that can or can't be saved. This budget was put together as someone has said before, based on the needs of our students, and it was looked at by the entire SU board thoroughly and passed. So I think it's, I think it's rash of us to start going through now and trying to slash line items or positions just willy-nilly. I think that, the move, if we make one at all, is to just simply ask them to ask the administration again to look for any possible savings. And with this, the teaser of the MTSS audit coming in, maybe there is some savings there. Kudos to you for thinking ahead and putting us in the position to be able to do that now when we need it.
That crystal ball did work, Bob.
Yeah, there you go.
Okay.
Mine
Anybody,
never works like that.
any live person? Any of the board members live here? You guys all set? Any other board members on TV land? Any SU board members who'd like to comment on the motion? Seeing none, are you ready to vote? Okay, so the motion is, and hopefully, got it written down. Peter moved that we take out the Assistant Director of Education out of the budget.
Special
Assistant Director of Special Ed, thank you, out of the budget. Seconded by Allison. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, please signify so by saying nay.
Nay.
Okay, so it's not a unanimous vote. Meredith, we're gonna do a roll call vote. Are you ready?
Yes.
Is that Meredith?
No, I think that was Peter.
Oh, Meredith? Okay, we're gonna do a roll call vote. There's no specific order. I just wrote down people as we came in. West River, Joe?
Wait.
You want-
No.
Nay.
Nay. So I'm like, oh wait.
Okay. Al?
Nay.
Dana?
Yay,
Yay?
yay.
Okay, I'm sorry. Sounds like nay
Yeah, I know.
from that distance.
Yes.
Peter?
Aye.
Thank you. There you go. If you'd said
Aye.
I instead of A. Emily?
No.
Paul?
No.
Dan?
No.
Rachel?
No.
Kate?
No.
Dwight?
No.
Allison?
No.
I count 9, 2 yeses and 9 noes. Believe the motion fails to carry. Okay, where do we go from here, folks?
Would we need a motion
I
to
don't think so.
ask them to look at the budget and see if there's any savings? It's just a direction?
No, I think we could give some direction. If I was to give direction, I would ask Bob to review Drew's 7 points in his correspondence. And I would ask him to meet with his team and look at the audit and see if we could schedule another meeting to come back and see if there's other savings. I would also encourage people who have questions to approach Bob. I'd like to say if again, Heidi made a very nice offer, but I think if everybody who has questions went and visited Heidi,
It's okay, I work on the weekend.
she wouldn't, I know.
Exactly.
So I think that would, I'd like to just do a central clearing, so if you could send me an email, if you have questions, I'll give them to Heidi. And Heidi, I'll just try to bombard you with one list. So if anybody has any other thoughts, maybe by Monday, say at noon time, you can send them to me.
So just for clarification, are you looking to try to schedule this other meeting prior to the West River meeting?
Oh, I think we're gonna have to.
Okay.
My only other comment, and let me just, I think though too, even if you went in with the Windham Central budget as it is to a meeting, or to on the ballot with the explanation if people ask that if there is a savings, then when you go to do your tax, your fill out your form, the form that goes in May for how much, they're gonna tax you, I think you could reduce it then. And maybe that's something we wanna find out, because again, I kinda really wish we had this discussion in November, and then it would have been a little easier, not as much of a time crunch. But let's see what you find out, Bob. Let's go from there. I have.
Right.
Peter.
Okay, Peter
And Dwight.
Dwight. Peter, I'm gonna go to Dwight first because he hasn't gotten to speak yet, and then we'll go to you. Go ahead, Dwight.
Thank you, Rich. I just wanted to say this has been very illuminating as a relatively new member of the board. This has been really informational and given me a lot understanding how things work. And thanks to Drew for asking these questions. It was interesting to me to find that the 50% of the budget actually is funded by grants. I didn't know that before the MTS's budget. I didn't know that. I also kind of a bottom line guy. It's amazing all the different changes that go through the budget, that it's only gone up 9% over the last 3 years on an average of 3% a year. That's amazing in today's world to have such a kind of a steady expenses. And thanks to Bob and Heidi for their explanations and review of everything. It was very interesting and well thought out. I will say I'm not in favor of going back to the drawing board on this. Based on what I've heard from Bob and from Heidi, I'm not hearing anything in their tone or their voices that are suggesting there's places they can cut. Now, we give them direction to cut. I'm sure they'll do that because that's what we told them to do. But I'm not hearing that. I'm not hearing that we could maybe go back and sharpen our pencil. I'm hearing that they've put together a well thought out budget that meets the needs of our students, and they put a lot of time and effort into that based on the answers that they've given and the presentations they've made tonight. I prefer we don't have them go back and look for any type of savings, and we just keep the budget as it is now. Thank you.
Thank you. Peter?
First, I would like to thank formally Bob and Heidi for all their work with this. Others have said it, but I do want to say it as well. I very much appreciate all the work, Heidi, especially that you've been doing with the West River Board and all the things we've been trying to work through. Would also like to thank Allison for seconding that motion, just so that we could get some discussion on it. The final thing I just want to say is that with a direction to the administration, I'm wondering, with Drew's comments, that he's had faculty members speak to him about some of these budget items. I'm wondering if maybe there could be some sort of anonymous survey of the staff of the SU to find out if particularly the coordinator, the curriculum coordinator position and the equity coordinator position are fully supporting the staff, and if the staff feel that they are supported. But obviously, I don't want to force anyone to speak out in the open on this. So I think that an anonymous survey might be the best route for that. Thank you.
Thank you, Peter. Yes? No, go ahead.
Go ahead, yeah. So I'd like to echo Dwight's comments and others. Just an incredible job, Heidi and Bob, in such a short period of time. I would say that given this opportunity that, okay, it has been reopened, Bobby, you alluded earlier, we may need some other things, right? So I guess I would say, let's take this opportunity, if we're gonna revisit it, are there other things that are necessary or needed in the budget? So I wouldn't just say, let's look at the cuts, but let's look at the overall budget, and are there adjustments that need to be made with new information that you've just received? Could be offsetting, but.
Right, well, and that could even be the case in special education. There may be more information now than there was 3 months ago that might be up, might be down, might be just different places where the money moves, but it's the same number. Like, yeah. Yes, if you want to, we didn't go there in this presentation. We went to like explaining the lines. But I feel like that would be the responsible thing to do, is to go back to Stephanie, go back to Heidi, and really look at that to make sure that it is the tightest it could be, and that it's the most accurate it could be. Because I think that's the piece I think that we want to make sure it is. We save money, great, but if it's not an accurate budget, so yeah, getting it for accuracy. We don't want to have a
deficit, because that's even harder to make up the following year.
I do want to point out with special ed, you can have one student move in, and everything that we've worked hard to make it's crashed. So, that's part of what goes with this
You can
special
also have
kind
one
of
student
thing.
move out.
You can,
And then you
and
could
you've got a
say-
surplus, so it's,
Again, it's a crapshoot.
I am gonna hope that we can do this by virtual meeting. Many of us have to drive a long ways to come here. I don't think there's gonna be a long discussion the next time it comes out. If we in fact go back to Bob and Heidi and say, come back to us between now and the 10th so that West Rivers can do their thing, can we schedule a meeting which is essentially a virtual
Well,
meeting?
you can also do this virtually. You don't have
Yeah.
to come here.
I recognize that.
It's hard for me to do a virtual meeting.
I'll come over to your place and help you if you
Well,
want.
no, but I meant, it's hard to know what's going on. We also have some people that they want to actually come and see it. So
And the
we
law
we are
does require now
required to
to
have a
offer
live
ID.
here.
Yeah.
Right, so again, please, I mean, I know it's easy for Joe. I watched him walk home the other day in the freezing cold, and Al wouldn't give him a ride. I don't know.
I tried,
No,
offered.
I sit at a desk all
But
day.
yeah,
and walk.
I do like to be here just because it's a little easier for our people in the
Allison
audience
has
to
a
come
hand.
in.
Allison.
Yeah, you all said Dan?
Fair enough. Yeah.
Okay, but we will, I don't know, we should talk about that, about scheduling a meeting, but let's
Yep.
get everybody else's thoughts. Allison, go ahead.
I just wanted a point of clarification on what we're doing here. Are we asking that Bob kind of goes back? He said something about reviewing for accuracy. Are we directing them to find savings or no?
Well, again, you know, Joe asked, should we make a motion? And I don't think we need to make a motion. I think we can ask Bob, because Bob has already stated that he has this MTSS audit that was completed. It came in quicker than he thought originally. When he first presented this to us back in October, November, he was hiring a company and they were telling us we wouldn't see anything until the spring. Their pricing was through the roof, and Bob's like, this is crazy. So remember, he found another gentleman who could do the audit, who had a lot of experience in Vermont, was a former superintendent, and he got the audit done fairly quickly for Bob. So we're very fortunate that's there.
And less money.
And a lot less money. So Bob has said that he'd like to look at that. We do have 10 days if he can look at it, and if there's some obvious things, he may be able to come back and say, you know what, I can move this and move that, and we can take, you know, 50,000 out of the budget, or we can take up 150. We don't know. He hasn't had a chance, and he'd like to review that with his cabinet and with his administrators. So that's what I think we were kind of opening up the door for. And then while he's doing that, we also mentioned Drew had a list of 7 items, you know, that we kind of went through. Peter asked a question about some of that they're going to want to look at, because there's some maybe an addition error that Drew identified where, you know, we don't think so, but let him just confirm that and see what else is out there. That was my thought. If anybody disagrees with that, you know, please let me know, and then we'll get to you, Emily. Is everybody okay with that? Is that everybody in TV land okay with that?
And you don't need a motion for that? You're good?
I don't believe so, because we made a motion and voted last meeting to reopen the budget. I think this is reopening it.
Perfect. Thank you.
And unless anybody disagrees. Emily, did you want to comment on that or something else?
I want to comment on that and something else.
Okay, go then. You got two.
I totally agree with you on that we don't need a motion from my perspective. And I think that the general direction, the feedback from our administration seems very clear. It seems very clear to me. So I'm perfectly comfortable with that. I also wanted to just say one thing that has just come up, and I wanted some clarity from you, Rich. You are the chair, and you get to make this decision running the meeting, but a motion doesn't need to be seconded to discuss. We could have still discussed that. I don't want people to feel like they can't discuss. I mean, a motion comes up, and if it doesn't get seconded, it doesn't mean we can't talk about the topic, right?
Correct.
So there was just some, and I'm not, this is not again, you know, I'm not trying to imply anybody was saying anything, but I don't want anyone to think that we're sitting at a board meeting and we need a motion in a second to be able to discuss something. We don't. We can discuss things anytime we a topic is brought up. You get to moderate that because you're the chair. So I leave this up to you, to your perspective. But the transparency of our work is critical to me. And we need to be able to have those conversations. And we don't need a motion and a second to do it. And thank
No,
you, Allison,
but-
for doing it.
But if a motion is made, you have
And
to
seconded.
you have to suspend discussion until there's a second or the motion dies.
That I totally understand how Robert's rules works. That's not what I'm saying. I just want to make sure that people understand they can bring a topic up anytime they want to discuss.
Right. No, and we're having that discussion now. So, okay, yeah. I just, Dana made a motion, it died. Allison made a motion, she did second it. I can't tell her she can't second a motion, that we can discuss it if it dies.
Absolutely. That's not what I'm saying. I just don't want anyone to think that they need a motion and a second to discuss something. That's all.
Okay, thank you for that clarification. Are you all set? She went. Okay, so is everybody good? I think we beat this up pretty good. But I'm very excited about, the one thing I'm really excited about, and I know it's been tough on you, Bob, and I promise you not that many meetings, but it is good to have participation. And
for sure.
Again, we've had really good turnout from the super board. We've had really good board member turnout. Eli is one of our new members, and he's here to learn. So, I think it's been really good, and I really appreciate it. And again, Drew, I'm very serious, and I'm not being facetious when I say I do appreciate this, because we've never had this kind of turnout at a budget meeting, and it does help people to understand it. Because I remember, who was a senator from Bennington, Emily, that used to comment that he hated supervisory unions because he didn't get a say on their budget, only the board members did.
Senator Sears?
Yeah, and then he got mad at me when I said, well, I don't get a say on what you vote on, but I have to live with your vote. So the SUs are a unique beast, and they may not be around anymore. Who knows? So we had feedback on governor's proposal from SU board to VSBA. So we are very fortunate in the corner, over in the left-hand corner, we have two of the VSBA reps for the Windham region, in Dan and Joe. And Dan, I think Dan or Joe, one of them asked if we could put this on. Joe, okay. So as Emily alluded, there's a lot of stuff going on under the Golden Dome. And the governor had a proposal, the Secretary of Education met with legislators, and then the governor's proposal is radically changing how education may look in the state of Vermont. And I guess the VSBA is having a meeting in February and 12th, and there's going to be, I guess, some discussion about it there. And they were just asking if anybody had any feedback or any thoughts that they could bring back. And I guess even if you don't now or you haven't read it all, please get hold of them and give them some feedback. The State Board of Ed is meeting next week in a special meeting to discuss it, because I think our chair at that board is going to testify for Emily. Go ahead, Emily.
I just raised my hand to see if you wanted me to do a 10-second update on timeline.
Yeah, I think there's.
Let me just touch base on the request from the VSBA just for a second. I think that what Joe and I would be looking for, I think, would be individual feedback from school board members, not as a SU, because we are representing school boards, not the SU. So if you got feedback for the School Boards Association, get in touch with us, but not as a member of this board, rather as of your own individual school boards.
Thank you for that clarification. Emily, go ahead. Give us the.
I have very little to share. I just wanted to share the timeline that tomorrow, the House, I can't even remember if it's a joint hearing or not, but the House Education Committee at least will be hearing what the proposal is from the administration on education funding. Now, I don't know if that's a fully baked proposal. I don't know, but we'll be hearing that. And then next week, the week of February 3rd, we've been told that the administration will come with further details around governance structure and the other education operations part of the plan. I know nothing about any of the details of any of those things beyond what we all know, which is that they're proposing a foundation formula. So anyway, stay tuned. That's what I know. We're waiting for details just like you.
Thank you, Emily. And again, I've always said we're very we used to have 3 SU board members that were in legislature. Now we're just down to Emily. So
And
she's
Laura,
so this
so
one- yeah, but she's not on the SU board.
That's true.
oh, right, well, she's a, but
Yeah,
she's.
but she
one
is
of the
on a local
members,
board, yeah.
Yeah.
So hey, just before I go to public, Bob, we need to have another meeting. I know. You can.
I'm pretty happy about it.
What's your basketball schedule look like?
Well, so
What is a reasonable time, knowing that we need to do something before the 10th?
well, so
Suggest virtually right before
it's really
ours.
going to be next week in essence.
Can we do it virtually the hour before the 10th meeting for our board?
Well, we could just
Same
do it
day?
here. We have to have a live location.
Right, but we could do it mostly
Yeah.
we'll be
Right.
here for a board meeting, but everybody else
is
can
that
You
work
could
for
do
you?
that, or
dial
you,
in.
well, I mean, the other option.
That gives you the most time, and we just do it 6 to 7.
I don't think either one is on the 10th.
Yeah, I mean, I guess if whatever you guys think, I don't know how much time you're going to need. If you had asked me, I wouldn't have anticipated this would have taken 2 hours. So, I mean, but you just have to, as long as you. I mean, I guess the time, maybe the pressure will be good. I don't know.
Monday, it's a Monday.
It's a
So it's a
Monday.
week from Monday.
Yeah, we're talking a week from
So
Monday.
we only have next week to pull everything up.
Right, but I mean, you kind of need that.
Remember when those 2 meetings Marlboro has next week?
Yeah.
You can drive over.
Marlboro doesn't have my.
Well, no, we do have a
We have a special.
special one.
Tuesday.
I wouldn't want to drive over here.
I think it's Tuesday the 11th, I think, right?
I'm not
Well,
available.
next week-
I knew I should have brought my,
Next week is.
I don't have it on my calendar because we haven't warned it yet, but I think that was Tuesday the
Okay,
11th.
we gotta come up with a
So-
date, so somebody suggest a
So,
date.
yeah, so you're saying Monday, the 10th,
Same day.
prior to the West River meeting, which starts at 7.
That way,
So-
no extra meeting.
But the other thing is if it lasts an hour, then you're gonna be stressed on your meeting. So can we start it at 5:30 and go to try to end at 6:30, but if there's some extra. And it may be that we don't make a decision and that you guys have to, West River has to go in with just.
I mean, so Windham, Marlboro, and Stratton have already adopted, so I mean, they're already in that situation anyways, right?
Right.
So,
Okay. So you wanna do,
So you'd
folks
say-
in TV land, does that Monday work for you all? I think I have 4 or 5 board members.
did you say 5:30?
Well, I'm just wondering if we do 5:30. Then that way we hope maybe we get done at 6:30, but if their meeting has to start at 7, I don't wanna start it. Say we're gonna start at 6, start at 6:15 because the Zoom doesn't work.
Yeah.
And then at 6:30, say, okay, Bob, you gotta end because we gotta get the Zoom set
I
up.
know.
Fair enough.
Most of the Zooms work.
Folks, Allison, Emily, 5:30 on the 10th.
I
Peter,
can't do Monday, sorry.
okay. Peter and Paul,
I'm good.
That would be good with me.
Emily,
I will do my best, but I may be on the road to Montpelier, and at best I will probably have to be Zoom.
okay. You
But
guys,
I'll try.
is there anybody else on TV? Oh, Dwight and Kate?
I could probably Zoom on the 10th.
Dwight?
I should be able to be there.
You folks?
I'll be right here.
You guys will be here anyway, so just Marlboro, are you okay with the Zoom?
Yeah.
Okay.
It'll be a Zoom.
Drew, are you around on the 10th?
He'll be here.
Well, he'll be here for the West River meeting. Okay, perfect. Okay, Abby Pelton, Abigail. Is she still there?
I don't know, you never called on.
Yes, I'm here.
Okay, so if Howie can't make that, just have us, warn a special Windham board meeting and just appoint somebody to be able to vote at that, okay?
Yes, sir, thank you.
Okay, you're welcome. Okay, I think we're all good. Everybody good? Okay, members of the public, folks, any comments? Go ahead, I can't, yes.
Karen Amadon from Jamaica. So I appreciate all the work that you all do, and it's a tough position you're all in. And I also appreciate Drew, who is diving in like a bulldog to try to find any money. So thank you, and thanks to all the people who also are interested in this. And it takes a village, it takes a community. So thank you very much.
We appreciate that. Folks, anybody else back there? All good? TV land, go ahead, Peter. I told you would be.
So Alan.
Alan, I'm sorry. Peter already got to speak today. Alan Block.
Thank you, Rich. Appreciate it. And I'll echo everybody quickly. Thank you, Drew, for putting together that document. Thank you, Bob, for answering it so thoroughly. And thank you, everybody, for providing such great defenses for these expenses and these line items. The one thing is, and forgive me, I'm a little new to the SU meetings and I haven't been around that long, but the one thing that I didn't really hear defended or explained was the equity coordinator, and it might be that I just don't know what the position is. But it seems like a large expenditure, and the only real explanation in that whole document is that there are maybe some other duties coming in, and I'd like to maybe understand what is it that the position does, and what is it that the students benefit out of it.
Do you want to handle it, Bob, or do you want to defer until next meeting?
I mean, I guess it's better to defer. I get the position was created in response to a policy that the SU passed that actually was part of a required policy adoption from the state of Vermont's statutes that required the adoption of a policy. In addition, there were conversations on boards around challenges happening in schools and student behaviors around race issues and things of that nature, and gender equity and things like that. And so the SU responded that year, as before I was superintendent, and the SU board created an equity coordinator position with the idea. It also grew out of at the time was called the Jedi team. Now it's called the equity team, which is a SU-wide intergenerational group of board members. Rich was on it initially. We have a different board member, Sarah Webb from West River, who's on now. Administration, students, teachers, staff from all over the SU. We just actually had a meeting 2 days ago. There's a lot of work that was coordinated by the equity coordinator to develop an equity, sort of operationalize, if you will, the policy, and it's a big job description, but it's a lot of different elements to it, from policy review to pushing with kids to working with teachers to ensure that equity is a focus area within curriculum. Bunch of stuff. At any rate, so that rolled out the same time as I started last school year, and we're in year 2 now. And so yeah, I think that's sort of the history of it. And
there was a job description created by the equity team.
The team created the job description with input.
Get that out.
We had a committee that did that as well. Sarah Webb, board member, was on that. Then we went through the hiring process, and so I mean, it was a pretty thorough process with a lot of people involved, and it's an SU-wide position. So that's sort of the story of it, I guess. I don't know if that helps Alan or not, but that's the background of it.
I mean, I guess I've had a daughter in Dover for, this is her 4th year, and she's never said anything about it. I've never heard anything about it. I think I read a report that was fairly short and general, and I was just wondering what sort of active benefits it's providing. That's what I still haven't really heard that. So I understand the policy, I understand the purpose. I'm more concerned with, like, okay, now 2 years in, what's it done? What are the improvements that the students have seen for 160,000 times 2?
Yeah, no, fair question. I would say, I mean, the best way I can answer that is in two parts. One, I don't have any quantitative data to give you on that, but what I can tell you is that she spends time in all the elementary schools in here at Leland and Gray, working with teachers, doing read alouds with kids, working with librarians on the collections, so kids have access to resources where they can see themselves in the curriculum, in the library books and things like that. She's done read alouds with the elementary schools in most, if not all, classrooms. She isn't someone who, like a elementary student might necessarily be like, oh, I know exactly who that is. If you asked your child, would you know who Dr. Lindsay is or who Lindsay is, they might know. But spread out with a lot of different moving parts and places. So she's, So it's hard to really give you a quantitative response to that at this time. But I will tell you that it was all of that is all considered part of the MTSS audit, because one of the elements that she has been working with is with school counselors and nurses around our SEL or social emotional learning component of our MTSS system. And so there'll be information, I assume, in the report about that rollout as well. So I'm going to get all sorts of input on that. So, but thank you. It's a good question.
Chrissy Haskins.
Good evening, Chrissy Haskins from Jamaica. First, I appreciate everyone's efforts working on all of these budgets. I know it's not easy and it requires difficult decisions and a significant amount of time and energy on all of your parts. So thank you. I have not personally done a deep dive on the details of the SU budget or the needs of the SU. However, I do strongly support Drew's quest for information and would appreciate the board's consideration of the recommendations. Some of these may not be possible or appropriate in the end, but it doesn't hurt to look into them and provide a response. So thank you for making that effort to look into his recommendations. And regardless of the district budgets, fund balances, and tax implications, all boards, SU and districts, need to be carefully considering expenses and be responsible with taxpayer money. This should be the case in any situation, whether tax rates are increasing or not, or if there are fund balances. Boards should always be responsible with public funds. Thank you.
Thank you, Chrissy. Michael P.
Thanks for taking my comment. I appreciate the efforts that folks are putting forth and the interesting conversations. I think from my perspective, it's really important that we consider folks of lower incomes. I understand that there is some mechanisms or are some mechanisms in place to help folks when it comes down to property tax time, but it sounds like Jamaica's looking at 22% increase. That's not good. We're taxing our residents out of our state, and we're decreasing our population daily. I mean, I've even thought of leaving my home state. I was born and raised here. My family's been here for, let's just say over 100 years. It's really stressful, and I understand that nobody wants to cut. But the reality is we can't afford it anymore. So something has to give. Where that give and take comes from, I don't know. I know that the legislature was theoretically going to fix the problem for this year last year, and they sort of hit a brick wall. And I know that the governor is proposing some changes that may or may not come to fruition, but I'm not going to hold my breath. I think it's up to the local boards to really look at what we're spending and where we're spending it. From what I can gather from the conversations I've heard tonight, is I really haven't heard a real dedication to reducing the SU budget. I understand that the positions and the expenses that are in the budget are valuable and that every position is valued. However, something has to give somewhere. Last year, Windham was in the situation where property taxes effectively doubled. And that wasn't because our school cost more. We got rid of our school. In fact, our budget went down. It's going to go down this year, but we're going to not be in a great situation this year either. This year we had the unfortunate, and we actually have more, unfortunate opportunity to experience abatements in our town, which we haven't done historically, where people literally could not afford their taxes. That is a huge problem. So I would encourage everyone, when they're looking at their budgets, to really contemplate what we actually need versus what we think we need. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Michael. Abby, I think you're the last one.
Thank you. I would just like to say for the vote that happened earlier, I would have said nay for cutting the assistant director position. And keeping in the theme with what could be coming out of the governor's office, changes in education are seemingly getting away from more local control. And if people feel that these types of meetings or the school board meetings are challenging to understand or difficult in really deciphering the information, just think about how difficult that will be with, 5 districts. How families will bear the burden for transportation. It's expensive and it's going to get more expensive, and a lot of families are going to have to drive more. So I hope folks will stay informed, make your voices heard while people are still listening. Hawaii is actually in the opposite situation that we are here in Vermont. They have a lot of challenges that I think Vermonters could learn a lot from in that scenario. And I just encourage folks to stay informed and budget wisely. Thank you.
Thank you. I don't. Oh, go ahead.
So, just want to make a correction to what Michael said in his comments about Jamaica's rate being 22%. Heidi, if you could clarify where we stand right now in terms of that number. It's not 22%.
What we were looking at when we left the board meeting was around 6.5%.
Okay.
I apologize. I must have misheard that the last meeting.
I think Drew said that last meeting. Yeah.
So the 22% has been a number that was discussed at public meetings. It was part of the discussion when Jamaica was asked to close the school. It's where we started the budget conversation. The board is not done yet working, West River is not done working on the budget. There's still, the last number we looked at was much better. I still, again, because I like to ask questions, I'm still concerned that number may not be right. We were looking at needing to cut $1 million out of the budget in order to get us down to the threshold. And when we walked away from the meeting the other night, we did not come up with either an offsetting revenue or an expense reduction of $1 million. We still hit the threshold. So I'm wondering if we have a formula error, but I'm going to follow
back and look
with Heidi before the next meeting because I think we may have a formula error, and I think it may be worse than the 7%. I spent the whole night after the board meeting
7%?
trying to figure
I was
that out.
working on it this afternoon. So
Oh, about 6.5 became 7, but yeah, okay.
Well, hey, it's the investments.
I
You know,
just-
they're growing.
everything goes up, yeah. It's
Okay.
interesting.
Thank you. Is everybody all set? We have our next meeting.
Rich,
Oh,
could I actually chime in?
well, I said Abby was last.
I know, but since
3
public comment
minutes or
wasn't
less.
quite done, is it all right if I talk?
Yeah, 3 minutes or less.
Cool. So I'm Lindsay Bertram. I'm a West River parent, a West River board member. And after, I wasn't going to say anything, but after hearing the description, the question of what the equity coordinator position does, and then hearing the response, I would love to hear a more detailed, at the next meeting obviously, but a more detailed description of like what the day-to-day job looks like what is, what does an average day look like, or, the average 5 days or whatever. Like, I understand there may be a lot of different tasks going on. As an elementary school parent, my elementary student has not any concept of this as this position. Understandably, elementary school students don't necessarily know everything that's going on in their buildings. However, it's obviously not wildly active. This person is not wildly active in that school. That being said, I just would love a little bit more clarification, I guess, because I didn't have as many questions coming in as I'm leaving with.
Okay.
Thanks.
And you just brought up a really good point. Do we have people that are here live written down somewhere?
You do not.
Can somebody just can you guys just sign in because I forgot to do that earlier. Anybody's here and those that left. Yeah, I'm sorry about that, but thank you. I think we did ask for that. We are gonna get a job description, and Bob was gonna look into that a little bit more.
On top of the actual job description, but like what a day looks like, you know, not just like these are the general roles and responsibilities, but a little more specific than that.
Okay,
Thanks.
thank you. And I don't see anybody online, so it's a little after 9. I'm sorry, folks, but we did start a little late. So I don't think we did too awful bad. I'd love to hear a motion.
Motion to adjourn.
Okay,
Second.
Doesn't need it.
we're all out of here. Thank you, everybody.
Oh, right.
No, we're all done.
It always gets one.
Yes.
though.
Yeah,
Yeah, right.